So our second group of biological molecules are called lipids. Now, lipids are interesting because, unlike the other classes, they are not true polymers, and that's because they are not made of repeating monomers. However, they are still biological molecules and they are still macromolecules because they are large. But lipids have a slightly different structure than the other biological molecules. In general, lipids are hydrophobic. So, hydro is a prefix that means water. Phobic is a suffix that means fearing. So, hydrophobic means water fearing. Lipids do not like water and they do not associate with water. They will separate from water. Lipids are made mostly of carbon and hydrogen. There are a few different groups of lipids that we'll learn about. The first one to learn about is called triglycerides. These are fats and oils, and these are made up of glycerol bound to three fatty acids. So tri means three. Glyceride is talking about the glycerol as well as the fatty acids. Some fatty acids have one or more double bonds. This is called an unsaturated fatty acid. If the fatty acid has only single bonds, then we call it a saturated fatty acid. There's an easy way you can tell the difference between unsaturated and saturated fats in your real life. If you look at a fat and it's solid at room temperature, that means that it is saturated. Like if you look at the fat on a piece of meat and it's solid, that's saturated. However, if you look at the oil that comes from plants and it's liquid at room temperature, well, liquids are unsaturated. So they're both triglycerides, but unsaturated are liquid and saturated are solid. What do they look like chemically? Well, let's take a look. Are any of these carbons double bound to another carbon? No, it doesn't look like it. So therefore, this fatty acid chain looks to be saturated. However, if we look at the complete triglyceride here, we can see that there's a double bond between these two adjacent carbons. That means that this molecule is actually unsaturated. And why do some of them look solid at room temperature while some of them look more liquid? In fact, this fish has a little bit of saturated and unsaturated, but some of the fats in this salmon will turn to oils at a low temperature. So why do they form these different structures, solids and liquids? Well, it comes down to the stacking of the molecules. So, for example, if you imagined stacking these molecules together side by side, they wouldn't really easily stack on top of each other because of this space between this bend. However, if we had totally saturated triglycerides, they would stack very nicely. This causes the molecules to be packed more densely, resulting in them maintaining a solid state. But if there's space between the molecules, like with an unsaturated fatty acid, then the molecules are less dense and they can move more freely, and then we see them take this liquid form here. 3.9 is talking about hydrogenated oils. So I'm going to kind of skip over this section and I'm just going to teach you about it in a different way. So a long time ago in America, there was an invention where someone said, hey, oils are healthy and solid fats are unhealthy. So, but people really like solid fats like butter and they want to use it on their food. So they said, what if we take this healthy stuff like vegetable oil and olive oil, and what if we just turn it into a solid by saturating it and adding hydrogens? So they actually did that, and that's how we get a certain product called margarine, which is a trans-saturated fat, which means that it's artificially saturated with hydrogens to make the molecules more dense and packed together. So the idea was we can have this delicious fat that almost tastes like butter. However, it's made out of plants and it's made out of oils, so it'll be more healthy. However, the uh, the effect after now 30 years of studying trans-saturated fats is that trans-saturated fats are equally as bad for you as saturated fats, and many people argue that they're even worse than natural saturated fats. So in an attempt to make a health food, they ended up making something